Welcome to Old Classic Car, and in this compilation we are looking at the best of British, yes, classic British cars from over the decades. And to begin with, a magnificent Rover P5B saloon. This was photographed at one of the Bicester Scramble meetings, and yes, the Bicester event will feature regularly throughout this particular compilation. Over 300 photographs in all of classic British cars feature here, so settle down and enjoy this selection. Next up, we are on a historic rally, and we have a lovely Triumph TR4A, the four-cylinder car with the independent rear suspension. The only difference really between this and the previous TR4, otherwise they look very, very similar indeed. This car from 1966. Now look at this incredible vehicle. This was at the East Anglia Transport Museum, and there is a video all about that place elsewhere here on the Old Classic Car channel. This is a Harding invalid carriage, sometime in the late 40s, early 1950s I think will be the date of that little gem. What a great little vehicle. And here a pair of Minis. We are down at the British Motor Museum at Gaydon for these two. In the background a Mini Clubman, and in the foreground a very racy looking Mini Cooper there. Very, very nice. I believe this has been in long-term family ownership, and it had recently been resurrected for this particular event. Now here's a bit of an oddball. You may not have seen one of these around before. This is a Winchester Series 4 taxi, and this one on a K-plate dates to 1971. Alongside it, another classic Brit there, the MGB Roadster. Bit of classic Vauxhall now. This was at the Inglenook Classic Meet. Again, there is a video all about that elsewhere here on the channel. This beauty is a Vauxhall Ventura of the late 1960s, 1968 or 9 to be precise. And again, another MGB Roadster alongside. And look at this, TAS 255, the registration number. This is a four-wheeled Berkeley T105, and this was seen at the Tatton Park Classic Car Show on a particularly sunny day. Amazing looking vehicle that is. There are also three-wheel versions of these available, and there will be one of those featuring later on. Okay, we are back to a historic rally just a few years ago. In the background an MGB GT, and in the foreground the very handsome looking Scimitar GT Coupe. Very, very smart indeed. This one from the late 1960s on period Minilite alloy wheels as well. And yeah, really, really smart looking. And we are back down at the British Motor Museum here, and we have an example of the Ford Capri Mark I on a set of later RS alloy wheels. But yeah, that looks to be in beautiful condition, that one. Continuing this look at classic British cars, we had to have at least one of these in the collection here. We have a circa 1969 Morris Minor Traveller, this one in pale blue. The woodwork looks immaculate on that, clearly fully restored and in beautiful condition. That is just lovely. This I think was at one of the VSCC Lowton Park meetings. And we are back down to the British Motor Museum, and if you've been on the channel for a while you'll know I did a video all about the Roots Group gathering in 2024. And this was just one of several Sunbeam Rapiers that appeared there, but this is a fairly early example of an Audax era Sunbeam Rapier. What a beauty that is. This is in the pit lane at Alton Park. UXJ11 is the registration number of this Austin-Healey 3000 Mark II. Yeah, bit of a discussion going on there perhaps between driver and mechanic, who knows, but yeah, what a great looking car that is, with the factory hardtop fitted as well. We're back down to Bicester in the public car park area, and we got a very smart car here from the early to mid 1950s, a Sunbeam Talbot 90. These were a very sporting saloon of the era, and yes, I was very tempted by one of these just a year or two back. Bit of 70s British Leyland now. I had to have a bit of this, and we have in the foreground a very smart Morris Marina Coupe. And behind it, the Morris Ital, or Ital, which was sort of the revised, facelifted version of the Marina in many ways. That one probably dates to the beginning of the 1980s, I would have thought. And we are at Gaydon again, but at a different event. This was at the All Ford Rally, and again that one features elsewhere on the channel. And here, two examples of the classic Ford Corsair of the 1960s. Oh, lots of beauty here. We have an A40 ourselves, and this is a Mark II version, slightly longer wheelbase than our car. Mark II version of the Austin A40 Farina. What a lovely car that is. Is that horizon blue the colour? I think it might be, with the black roof. Yeah, I think standard was two-tone colours on those. Right, DLA 402 is next, and we're going to the pre-war years, 1936 to be precise, and this magnificent Riley Kestrel. What a bobby dazzler that is. Again, as with all these compilations, let me know in the comments which car or cars you would most like to own yourself. There's going to be quite a few to choose from here. And here we have WE3360, a sporty looking little Austin 7 here. This was seen at a VSCC road rally event just a few years ago. Just alongside it there on the left, you can see the bonnet hump, which tells us that it's an MGC, the 6-cylinder version, I suppose, of the MGB. Back down at Bicester, this is one of several E-types we've seen over the years, a side-on view of a lovely Series 1 or 1.5 fixed head E-type, so either 3.8 or 4.2 litre engine in this one, depending on the age of it. What a handsome machine that is. And oh, look at this, we used to have something very similar to this. This is a 4-door standard companion, the little estate car version of the Standard 10, and clearly in very good company there on the Standard Motor Club stand. But yeah, very, very nice, and quite rare, those little estate cars as well. And it's great to see this one. And in 2024 we got to have a private tour of the Bentley Heritage Collection, and amongst the many, many earlier cars, some of which will feature later, was this, a Bentley Turbo R, which is basically the Bentley version of the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit with a bit of extra grunt turbocharger and a few handling tweaks. Now back to the BMC and BL Rally Day in 2024, and here we've got a rear three-quarter view of a long wheelbase Austin Gypsy, BMC's equivalent, if you like, of the Land Rover in many ways. This one dating to 1964. And here's a handsome son of a gun. We saw the Scimitar Coupe before, and prior to that, this is the car that Reliant had on offer, the Sabre 6. There was also the Sabre 4, but I think this is one of the 6-cylinder cars. Looks like it's got TR6 wheels on it, possibly. Quite wide steel wheels on this one. A40 rear lights as well. And when did you last see one of these? A convertible version of the good old Vauxhall Cavalier. There can't be too many good ones of these around. This one on a D plate puts it at about 1986. Got a Triumph Stag in the background there too, just for a bit of added British car goodness. Next up, a classic Triumph on a G plate, about 68. This one, Mark III Triumph Spitfire. I used to have one of these. The very first car that I pieced back together was just like this particular car, although not quite as shiny as that by the time I'd finished. But yeah, happy memories of owning and driving a car very, very similar to that indeed. And staying with Triumph, we have this beauty. COV25G is the registration, a 2.5 PI version of the big Triumph Saloon of the late 1960s. What a handsome car that is, in dark blue with the mini-light wheels. And with the Lucas fuel injection, very similar setup to that on the TR5 and TR6. Now we are at Turnhill Hall, and a great evening meet that takes place several times a year. And here we have a Mark I version of the Ford Consul in rare convertible form. How unusual is that? We've got an Austin Cambridge in the background and a Mark II Ford Escort alongside as well. So yeah, lots of British car there. And we are back down at Lowton Park, and CJW443 is a 1939 MGTA. The original midget was the T-Series, and this is a late pre-war example. Very, very nice. Very similar looking to the later TCs, but just a few subtle differences. And another event we went to for the first time in 2024 was the Mill Meast Gathering. And here we have a lovely Defender. That's our Ford V8 Pilot alongside it. And next to that, the Ford Escort Mark I. And we are back to the Bentley Heritage Collection, and two beauties here. Got a T-Series, a T1 on the left, and that's recently been restored on behalf of the factory. And in the background is a T-Series Mulliner Coupe, the two-door coupe equivalent of the four-door T1, both in beautiful condition. And also really, really eye-catching was this magnificent old Humber. The old Humber Super Snipe of probably about 1951, that kind of era. big straight six engine in these. Similar engine to that one fitted in the Commerce Superpoise commercial vehicles. Now we are back at Bicester. We have a Bristol 400, and alongside that, what appears to be a pre-war vintage Alvis 1250. So again, two classic Brits for the price of one there. But which would you prefer, the post-war beauty that is the Bristol or the pre-war Alvis? Again, let me know in the comments which are your favourites. And here we are at Onslow Park for the big steam rally, and in the foreground a magnificent just post-war Austin 16 KLM 270, the original registration number, which we like to see. MG Magnet as well, and a Wolseley 1500 alongside that. So again, three classic Brits there. And we've seen a bit of Mini already, and here we have another one, a rally prepared Mini Clubman, possibly the 1275 GT. This one on a K plate, so about 1971 is the age of that particular car, and there's another Triumph 2000 Mark 1 in the background. And here we go, right on the left is the old Leyland Princess, the wedge-shaped Princess, and alongside it in red, the Austin Ambassador, which was the later revised equivalent, I suppose, of the earlier Princess. The Ambassador introduced the opening hatchback to this particular body shape. Back to classic Triumphs, we've had the TR4A, and this is the very similar looking TR5. So this has got the fuel injected, the PI, Lucas PI system, 2.5 litre straight six under its bonnet, and what a beautiful car that is to look at and listen to. These sound fantastic. I love the 2.5 litre Triumph. And now we have a side-on view of a Vauxhall Velox from the probably late 1950s. This is a three-window car. Later cars had a wraparound rear window one piece, but this still has the three-piece arrangement. But yeah, very, very handsome, the old PA series Vauxhall. And on a historic rally several years ago now, actually, we have a Morris Mini Cooper being given the beans through a particularly muddy rally stage over near Beeston Castle. And yeah, that was a lot of fun to spectate at. Probably even more fun to take part in, I imagine. But yeah, it's great to watch all those cars. Now we have one of the ADO 16 cars from BMC. This is the MG 1100, the sporty version of the Austin and Morris 1100 range. This one dates to early 1967, judging by the E registration number. This was at an evening meet we went to. In the foreground is KLO 449, that's a P3 Rover from 1949, about 2.1 litres, the engine in that particular car. Alongside it's the good old Austin-Healey Sprite Mark 1, the Frog Eye or Bug Eye Sprite. Back to British Leyland now, two eras of the classic Austin Allegro. Maybe you've owned one of these. Let me know your memories of these cars or any of the cars that feature here. But yeah, the earlier car in brown and the newer, I think that's an Allegro 3 in the foreground with the twin headlights either side. And well, I'm sure most of you will recognise this car. This is one of the original cars used in Only Fools and Horses, the Reliant Supervan 3. What an amazing looking vehicle that is. Yeah, that is just fantastic. This was down at the Bewley Motor Museum just a couple of years back. And we are back to one of the historic rallies that we spectated at just a couple of years ago. RDF 783 is an Austin A90, the Austin A90 Westminster. And what a great looking car that is on a particularly wide set of steel wheels. That looks great, and it sounded really great, that straight six. We're back at Bewley for this one, Yorkshire's finest, the Jowett Javelin Saloon 204 LPG. This car first put on the road in June of 1949. Very, very advanced car, very streamlined styling for the era as well. And yeah, very nice to see that one. And we were out and about on holiday down south just a few years ago, and we spotted this, a Jensen Healey. So this was a collaboration between Jensen and Healey with a Lotus twin cam engine. Alongside it's a Land Rover, very, very smart too. Now, what do we have here? Dating to the late 40s or probably just the early 1950s, we have the Morris Oxford MO, the Wolseley 1500 in the background, and a Series 1 XJ6 alongside it. Yeah, this again was at the Onslow Park Steam Rally. Did a great video there all about that, which is well worth looking out. And we're over at Crewe Heritage Centre now, and we have a classic Armstrong Siddeley car. GHP80 is the original registration number on that one. This is an 18 horsepower limousine of probably the early 1950s, I would have thought, but quite a handsome car, quite a rare car as well, being the limo. And we're staying at Crewe Heritage for this, and we have a pair of Maestros. B150 YHU, that's a pretty rare survivor. The MG Maestro of the early 1980s, about 1984, but very, very few of those around, still with the correct alloy wheels on as well, so that's really cool to see. And this was at Malvern, I believe, the classic car show down there. And this is now this TC21, but not just any TC21, this is the Grey Lady version, the sporty version with wire wheels, and you can just see a couple of extra intakes on top of the bonnet, at the forward end of the bonnet. That tells us that it's the Grey Lady. Now, sadly, this motor museum, I believe, has closed, or is in the process of closing at the time of recording this video. This was at Moreton Hampstead Motor Museum, and we have a Vauxhall Wyvern of the 1950s. So this was the 4-cylinder E-series Vauxhall, and if you wanted a 6, you could have a Velox or the top-of-the-line Cresta. And staying with Vauxhall, we have this magnificent Vauxhall Senator 3-litre I from about 1985. And other markets, these were badged up and built and sold as Opals. We are back down at a very, very sunny vista and a glorious example of the Mark II Jaguar, the Jaguar Mark II Saloon. This one dates to the early 1960s, I believe. Later cars had slimmer bumpers and were badged up as a 240 or the 340, depending on the engine size. I think this was a 3.4, this one. And back down at Gaydon, the British Motor Museum. Look at this, a wonderful Triumph GT6 Mark II on a G plate, twin pipes, 2-litre straight 6 under the bonnet of this one. And again, these 6-cylinder Triumphs, they just sound wonderful. Yeah, lovely car. This was also at Gaydon on a different event, and we have the Ford Sierra 5-door hatch, not a Cosworth. It tends to be Cosses that you see mostly at shows on XR4Is. But actually I find the more interesting are the more regular saloons, and that's what we're looking at here. So yeah, great to see that one there with an Astra alongside. Two classic Brits here, we've got another Moggy Traveller in the background. And in the foreground, an MG saloon. This looks like a YA saloon, probably late 40s or the beginning of the 1950s, about 1950 or 51 I would have thought the date of that car. The body shell based on that of the Morris 8 Series E. Okay, this is a car I've featured before at Thoresby Park, SWG 456, a Sunbeam Alpine. This one dates to January of 1954. These were popular in rallying in the 1950s. They go very well indeed. And this was a beautifully restored example, so eye-catching. We're going to slightly more recent times, well, the early 1980s now, if you can call that recent. We've got a Talbot Alpine here, the hatchback, the 5-door hatchback. And wow, that is such a rare survivor. How that one has survived is just amazing. These and the Solara saloons are all but extinct now. Now, you could be forgiven for not recognising one of these. 8583 BP, the registration. This is a Peerless GT, the 2-litre car, based on TR3, Triumph TR3 running gear, but you don't see many of these around at all. There's also the Warwick, which was very similar to this. Back down to Gaydon, and two examples, B and a C reg examples of the Austin Montego. Well, I say Austin, the one in the foreground is an MG actually, MG Montego, and alongside it is the Austin Montego Estate, no less. There was quite a gathering at the BMC and BL Day in 2024, and here we have the great little Peel P50. This one is on display down at the Bewley Motor Museum, the National Motor Museum, and that is a place well worth visiting if you find yourself on the south coast. There are some incredible cars there, including lots of really, really early cars as well. Back to Crewe Heritage Centre now, and this is a car that pops up from time to time at the events we get to, the mighty Daimler DS420 limo. These were built right through into the 1980s, but the running gear underneath was based on the old Mark 10 and 420G Jaguar of the 1960s. And a lovely pre-war saloon here. This one pops up at quite a few of the meetings we get to in the immediate area. And this is a Wolseley Hornet, a little 6-cylinder saloon, about 37, 1938, that kind of date, just late post-war if you like. And we're back at Thoresby Park, and in the foreground we've got YAR 297, little Austin, Cambridge. It could be an A40 or an AE50. They look pretty much identical from the front, I think, and in the background a couple of Jaguar E-types. Now here's a handsome son of a gun. This was at Goresworth Hall again. We've done videos on both our channels of the Goresworth Hall meets in 2024, so I recommend having a look at those. And here we have a lineup of classic Bristols in the foreground, a Bristol 403. What an incredible looking vehicle that is. And we're back at Gaydon. This was in 2019 for a big mini celebration. This is the Cox GTM. And yeah, my uncle had one of these, and allegedly it may have been the first car that I actually was a passenger in that went over 100 miles an hour. And yes, that was quite the car. Mini engine and subframe in the back of those. And staying with A-series powered cars, we have this unusual prototype from the early BMC days. There was a proposal to do a convertible version of the Austin A30. This is just a wonderful survivor. It's quite an early A30 as well, the AS3. A few little differences compared to the later A30s. Now, what a beauty. This is GR6798. Here's the registration of this magnificent Triumph Dolomite 1460 drophead foursome coupe. And you can see the roof partially furled back there. But yeah, what an incredible vehicle with that waterfall grille. And again at Goresworth, this is, well, this pops up at quite a few of the meetings we get to. Dating to 1965, the Jensen CV8, which is mainly fiberglass bodied, but not all fiberglass. I think the door skins were aluminium on these, and the steel floors as well. But incredible car, big V8 in the front. And here we have a Series 2. This is the Daimler version of the Jaguar XJ, so this would be a Series 2 Daimler Sovereign, and it's on a P plate, so that puts this one at about 1975. The Series 2, I think, was introduced in about 1973. Now, look at this beautiful car here. This is just a stunning car. UE5425, the registration, a 1928 Humber 1440. Just look at that split divided V windscreen on it. Absolutely magnificent car. That is just fantastic. We're back at Goresworth here, and you don't see these too often. This is the Hillman Minx Californian. It's quite a stylish looking car based on contemporary Minx saloons. But yeah, really, really nice car. Three-piece wraparound rear screen in these. Quite bright two-tone colour schemes as well, but yeah, these are really smart. And here we have LLB 95P, a 1975 Bristol 411. And yeah, what an incredible, distinctive car, real quality car. These were a bit quirky, and they got quite quirky in the styling as the years rolled on, but these were still quite a handsome looking car, I think. Now we are down at Malvern for one of the very popular classic car shows that take place down there. We have a Mark II version of the Ford Zodiac two-tone car, and behind that an early Series 2 version of the good old Morris Minor saloon, the two-door saloon, still with the cheese grater grille that was carried over from the late MMs that came before. We're at Malvern again, and a Ford Ka, surely a future classic if ever there was one. Find a good one of these, and I think that'll become quite a rarity in a very short time, because most of these are rusting away now. Somewhat older, and still at Malvern, we have this wonderful little bullnose Morris. What a great little vehicle that is. Little Cowley. Yeah, it's got the dicky seat in the back as well. Yeah, fantastic. So it's a 2+2, I suppose you'd call that. Two seats in the front, and someone else can sit in the back out in all weathers. Here we have another magnificent Humber. I think this is a Super Snipe, sort of late 1950s, maybe 1960 this one. I think it's one of the cars with the four headlights, but still with a wraparound rear window. Later cars would have a much squarer roofline compared to this one. I do prefer these earlier cars, if I'm honest. And one of the latest sort of modern classic retro cars that we see occasionally at the shows we get to. This one on an H plate, about 1990, the Vauxhall Nova. Now, is this the GSI or the GTE? If you know your older Vauxhalls, I'm sure you can tell me in the comments which particular model it is we're looking at there. And somewhat older is a lovely old Daimler drophead here, HRU 100, the registration of that. This is probably about 1948, a Daimler DB18 drophead coupe with a super little Morris 8 Series E Tourer alongside. That is very nice, but the Daimler, wow. Okay, we're back at Bicester. There's one of the old hangars in the background, and here we have a Triumph GT6 Mark III. The early Mark IIIs carried over the Rotoflex, the fancy Rotoflex suspension of the Mark IIs, but this was simplified and cheapened a bit on the later Mark IIIs. Which system this car has, I'm not quite sure. And elsewhere at Bicester was this, a beautiful Gordon Keeble. These were built from about 64 through to 1967 with a 5.4 litre Chevy V8 under that fiberglass bodywork. But very, very eye-catching cars. Quite a swanky looking coupe. Yeah, rare to see that one. Okay, we're back down at the British Motor Museum. We've had some good shows down there in the last year or so. Here is an Austin Metropolitan. What an incredible car that is, or probably the Nash Metropolitan to be strictly correct. These were originally built by Austin on behalf of Nash in America, but later ones were badged up as Austins. And another classic Triumph now. We have a circa 1964 Triumph Herald 1200, styling by Michelotti. Same went for the Spitfire as well. But great to see this one. It looked to be in really nice condition. I like the colour as well. Very, very smart indeed. And we're back at Thoresby Park, and a Mark II version of the Ford Fiesta in the foreground, circa 1987, and a couple of Moggy Miners behind that. Continuing this look at classic British cars over the years, we have one from Wales here, XKN 857J, a 1971 Gilbern Invader, V6 Ford powered, two big pipes sticking out the back there, and a nice set of alloy wheels as well, and the full length opening roof. Very, very nice indeed. Yep, these were built in Wales. Another classic BMC car here now from the early 1950s. This is the Austin A40 Somerset, which had a little 1200cc four-cylinder engine column gear change, and the engine went on in a revised form to become the B series, which was used for many, many years in so many different cars. Classic Rover here now from about 1989, a little Rover 200 hatchback. This is the R8 series of Rover 200. This could be a 214, 216 perhaps. It looks like one of the slightly higher spec ones with the alloy wheels. That's a Shropshire registration on there, AW. And now, down at Bicester, I was particularly taken with this. This is an incredible Daimler Majestic Major, the 4.5 litre V8 powered car. These could crack 120 miles an hour back in the day, and yeah, what an incredible bit of kit that is. I love the Armstrong Siddeley behind that, we'll see that later in this compilation. Okay, somewhat smaller, still at Bicester, we have an Austin-Healey Sprite Mark I, and another modified Sprite alongside that. Out in the public car park, again at Bicester, we have this. Now this is a lovely little car. You don't see too many good ones of these. The Mark I version of the Ford Fiesta. This one's got the XR2 pepper pot alloy wheels on it. It wouldn't have had those originally, but I like the old roof rack and the case on the roof as well. So yeah, quite a rare survivor. This one in beige. Okay, and that's a VSCC event. This was actually not quite VSCC era, but we have a Triumph TR3A, and again on its original registration number as well, and a great pair of Lucas lamps with covers on the front, and you can just see another Lucas lamp on the middle of the hardtop. So that's perfect, that is. Right, we're in North Wales, over near Ruthin, I think this was, for a stage of a historic rally just a few years ago. I think it was the Hero Challenge Rally. This is a Lotus Elan Plus 2, so yeah, slightly bigger than the regular Elans, and probably a little bit more elbow room too. But yeah, quite a lineup of different cars in the background. And LLJ 61 now. We're going back to the late 1940s with this, the standard Vanguard Phase 1. The old Beetleback Vanguard. Of course, you could get dinky toys of these back in the day. The Phase 1A stuck with the Beetleback styling, but had a slightly different grille arrangement. This was at a New Year's Day VSCC, or Vintage Sports Car Club, gathering. And in the foreground is a magnificent Lagonda. This is just a stunning car. I think it's an LG 45, probably early 1930s, but whatever, a beautiful, beautiful Lagonda. And another classic Brit here, we have a good old Leyland Mini, the Mark III version of the Leyland Mini from the early 1970s, gone with the sliding door windows and the exterior door hinges. Of course, the pickups and the vans stuck with sliding door windows and outside hinges all the way through production. Right, now we're back at the Inglenook Classics meeting, which is over sort of St Helens way, I think it was. And in the foreground we have a lovely Triumph TR2, and behind it one of the later cars, I think that's a TR4A or a TR5, I can't quite remember now. But either way, two classic TRs there, fantastic to see those. And at Goresworth we spotted this, the Riley 1.5. So this was the sporty version, I suppose, the equivalent of the Wolseley 1500, but the Riley had twin carbs, extra instrumentation as well. And there's a pre-war Riley parked alongside it. But yeah, the 1.5 was very much BMC era, and they were back at Bicester. There's the control tower in the background, and well, we've got a Moggy Minor in the background, but the main car that we're looking at here is a Jaguar S-Type. This one from 1965, so it's kind of an updated Mark II, but the main benefit was it had the independent rear suspension, the S-Type. And still at Bicester, parked alongside a lovely BMW coupe, we have this, a Lotus Elite. Now, these are very nice, very popular in club racing back in the day, and these are lovely. I did have a ride in one of these around Silverstone once, and it was just a treat. A lovely, lovely little car. And back to the Roots Group Day in 2024 down at Gaydon, and we have a Singer Vogue in the background, and in the foreground a Sunbeam Rapier, another example of the Rapier, this one a fair bit later than the other car that I featured just a few minutes ago in this particular compilation. And behind it, it looks like we've got a Hillman Imp. Yeah, now we are back at a VSCC Loughton Park, and this incredible creation is the Napier Bentley. So Bentley chassis and an incredible Napier aero engine, and this thing just sounds incredible. I'd recommend, there's a good video about this car elsewhere on the channel. It sounds amazing. And here we have a Hillman. Now Hillman, probably a Hillman Hunter. It could also be a Minx, but I'm going with Hunter for this particular car. This one is from about, well, NREG, so 74, 75, that kind of era, and alongside another classic Brit, an MGA Roadster. And talking of open-top cars, we have this, the Reliant Scimitar SS1. If memory serves, these were available as a 1300 or a 1600, and alongside that, we have a rubber bumper era MGB GT. Two more classics here, two for the price of one. In the foreground, 980DA. This is another Berkeley. This is a three-wheel version of a Berkeley this time. A T60 Talisman. And it's bolted up in the background, of course, a Ford Capri Mark 1. And I just popped into Walton Park sometime in 2024 during one of my test drives in the Jaguar in the background. And there was this, a V-Reg, quite a late example of the Ford Escort Mark II, the RS2000 with a droop snoot. This one is in lovely, lovely condition, and it's in our favourite colour as well, of course, bright yellow. And also at Alton, at a different event, we found this XPG1 is the registration of this 1963 TVR Grand Tourer Mark III, big mini-light wheels. These things are always great value to watch, and indeed so are the V8 Griffith versions as well. Okay, now back to regular road cars of the 1950s in particular. This is a lovely Morris Oxford. I do like that, sort of about 1955, 56, that kind of age. And a Triumph Dolomite parked alongside that. But yeah, what a great, I love that two-tone Morris. That is such a rare sight now. And wow, this is a very imposing Rolls-Royce. This was at the Onslow Park Steam Rally. That really is something to behold. FGX3, the Rolls-Royce 2530 Sports Saloon. That car dates to 1937. Oh, incredible coachwork on that one. Very, very sleek. And staying with Rolls-Royce, we have PLB 78, a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow 1. What a beauty here we have now, and this is an Alvis, very, very smart, the Alvis TD21. And if you like your old Alvises, please check out the video I did a little while ago where I visited an Alvis specialist and had a crawl through his barns where he had some incredible survivors of cars just like this one. And well, look at that grey Fergie in the background. That also qualifies for a classic British vehicle. In the foreground we have a straight six MGC Roadster. So there's a BMC straight six in there, shoehorned under the bonnet of this MG Roadster. Very, very nice car it is too. We are back in just near the paddock area at Oulton Park, the racing circuit. Now, new Ginetta experts will tell me what this is. I think it's a G4, in which case it's got a 4-cylinder Ford engine under that swoopy bonnet. But if you know any more about this particular car, please drop a note in the comments. It's always great to read what you think of these cars. And at a particularly damp meet that we went to just a little while ago, we saw this, a VLO 660, a great example of the Rover P4. And we saw an MG Maestro just a little while ago, and this is one of the later cars. This is the Maestro Turbo, and there aren't too many of these around. Apparently these were really quick cars for the era. So yeah, nice to see one in such great condition here. And alongside it is the last of the Triumphs, the Triumph Acclaim. Now, there we have the little estate car version of the Hillman Minx. So this is the Hillman Husky. And note the funny little door handles, which I think are the same as the Comma Cobb, the van equivalent to the Hillman Husky that you see here. But this one's in beautiful condition as well. And we have another Rolls-Royce here, and another example of the Silver Shadow 1. So this was introduced in about, was it 1966, I think the Shadow 1 came out, and then was revised in the mid-70s as the Shadow 2. Now what a beauty this is. UC2467 is a registration number on this 1928 Bentley 4.5 litre. And in the background is that TR3 that I was talking about just a few moments ago, and you can see a little bit better the lamp mounted in the middle of the hardtop roof. Now this was a car that we've seen quite a few times, Vauxhall Viva HC, always in immaculate condition, the flags flying there. And yeah, this one dates to the early to mid 1970s, but yeah, great to see that one in such nice condition, a two-door saloon version. And of course you could get the big estates as well. Now, Austin Maxi next. This one's early 70s. There's a slightly later facelift Austin Maxi alongside it. These came out in the late 1960s. And I think they had like a cable-operated gear change, the early cars, which wasn't universally popular, and I think that was swiftly updated and improved during production. Now, this is an incredible vehicle, This is the Crossley Burney Streamline. There's only 25 of these rear-engine cars were built. And if you go on the old classic car image archive, you'll see that I found a stash of original photographs of one of these, perhaps a test car. And you'll find that in the image archive section, so it's well worth checking that out. And we're back to AD016s with BMC. And this is quite a late one. This is the Austin 1300 GT, which was the sporty one of the range. I think this probably took over the sporting from the MG 1100 and 1300 that came before. Very distinctive wheel trims on those. And we are back down at Malvern Classic Show. This is an Austin 10.4 Litchfield, which was an updated, restyled version of the previous Chrome Rad Austin 10.4 of 32 to 1934. These have the painted radiator shells, so you can tell that this is 1935 or later. Okay, back at Bicester, and this is a glorious AC Seeker. This was like the sort of fixed head coupe version, I suppose, of the AC Ace. My youthful assistant is a big fan of these AC Seekers. He really does like these a lot, and I can see why. Very, very smart car. Look at this, a Hillman Super Minx. When did you last see a good one of those? That one's quite a nice one, and like with the bigger Humbers, this has the wraparound rear screen and curvy roof. Later cars, they went with a much squarer roof line, perhaps to aid headroom in the back. But yeah, they lost something in the conversion, I think. And this, well, the good old Farina, the BMC Farina. This is the sporty-ish MG Magnet. This took over from the ZB Magnet, which came along in the 1950s, the ZA and the ZB. And this is a much later car based on the Farina, very similar shape to the Morris Oxford and the Austin Cambridge. And this, at first glance, looks like a Vauxhall Victor FB, but this is the VX490, the sporty version of the FB Victor. And these are very, very thin on the ground. If we were looking at the back, they have very, very distinctive vertical tail lights which set it apart, and the stripe down the side is also a sign that we're looking at the VX. Now we're back at Gaydon, and a couple of examples of the Ford Consul Classic here. The one in the foreground is a 4-door car, the one in the background is a 2-door. Of course, you can also get the racy looking Capri version as well, with a much lower, sleeker roofline. Back to historic rallying, and holding up a Volvo 122S, we have a Triumph Stag. That one's about 1970, great year, and yeah, 3-litre V8 engine under that car's bonnet. And this one did sound great as we watched this one going around the cones. And we are back down at the British Motor Museum, and here we have a lovely standard 10. This one had actually been upgraded. I think this probably had a 1500 engine from a 1500 Spitfire, but that engine was just an evolution of the old standard engine, which also saw service in the Triumph Herald, the Triumph Spitfire, and so on. Now look at this magnificent pre-war Bentley. That is something else. GK3664. That is a 6-litre saloon from 1929. What an incredible car that is. The bonnet just goes on forever. Somewhat more modest and in very, very original condition, which we do like a lot, alongside an E83W Woody, which is pretty unusual too. This is a Ford 100E Prefect, the 4-door version of the 100E, the 1172cc side valve engine. Although looking at the extra dogleg on the front, this could be a 107E with the overhead valve engine. Right, we're back down to Gaydon, and a lineup of classic Morris 1800s here. Austin and Morris versions of these were available. And yeah, good car by all accounts, also penned by Sigonis, who was responsible for the post-war miners, and the Mini, of course. A front-wheel drive too. And here, a product of Aston Martin, and what a beauty that is, 868XUU. This is an Aston DB24, and wow, isn't that incredible? In the background, the little blue car is BMC 9X. This was a proposal in the late 1960s to replace the Mini, which didn't actually come to anything. And down at the National Motor Museum at Bewley, I've photographed this NYY 162, a 1953 Reliant Regal Mark 1, a 3-wheeler. What an amazing survivor that is. I do find these little cars really, really interesting. And we are back at Inglenook Classic Meet, which should be taking part again hopefully later this year. We're hoping to get along to that. This is a Series 3 Jaguar E-Type, so these all had the V12 engine. This is a 2+2 coupe, so the higher roofline and extra set of seats in the back. They're on a K-plate, so about 1971. And here we have E853WOL, which is a 1987 Rover 213 SE. A car that you don't see all that often. It's one of those cars that used to be everywhere but have all but disappeared now. Two beauties here, both British. The one in the background is a Rover, and in the foreground we've got VG7419, a Morris 8 Series 1 4-door saloon. Of course, you can get 2-door saloons and little tourers, and indeed a van version of this as well. But yeah, this is a super little car, this one is. And the rear 3/4 view now of the sporty Hillman Avenger Tiger. Look at those racy stripes down the side, Minilite alloy wheels, and that very distinctive boot spoiler. The colour's pretty eye-catching as well. So yeah, there'll be several Avengers featuring in this compilation, but yeah, this is a sporty one. And talking of sporty ones, this was at an evening meet we went to at the Goshawk pub. That was in 2024. We've got a Vauxhall Chevette HSR here. Real wide set of mini lights on this one, but yeah, very, very eye-catching car. Real great survivor, this one from the 70s, of course, about 1977. And going back to the early 1950s, we have this lovely Riley RM Saloon. Very, very nice. Some of these were 1.5 litre, some were 2.5 litre, both twin cam engines, and apparently went very, very well indeed. What a lovely car. Great styling. Okay, and now we have a couple of Wolseleys, a couple of BMC era Wolseleys. In the foreground we have the little Wolseley 1500, quite an early one. The later ones had a different grille arrangement and slightly bigger side lights and turn signals. In the background we have a Wolseley, probably a 1660. Now this is one of the oldest cars to feature in this particular collection. This is a air-cooled Rover 8 from the very early 1920s. So yeah, what an intriguing little car, little light car, amazing little car that is. That was down at the Haynes Motor Museum. And here, wow, what a beauty, an Austin A110 Westminster, two-tone Austin Westminster from 1967, and a Vanderplas Princess parked alongside it. So both variations of the big Farina theme of the 1960s. And, well, quite a lineup. We've got some Bentleys in the background, a little Austin 7 Chummy, and in the foreground we've got WPC 868. This is a Bristol 404, which is a little two-door car. There was also the 405, which was available as a four-door or a drop-head coupe, but I think this is the 404. And we've got a bit more big Triumph action here, an estate car version now of the Triumph 2000. And what a practical classic that is. I really do like that a lot. Mini lights don't suit every car. I've talked about this before in a separate video, but I think they do look the part on these mighty estate cars. And we are back down at Lowton Park, the popular hill climb venue down in Shropshire. And here we have DW7932 and Elvis 1250 Tourer getting ready to go up the hill climb course at Lowton. TR7s are plenty here. There's a drop head in the foreground. Initially these were only available as the fixed head coupes, but a lot of people were sort of pretty upset about that because the TR6 that came before was open top. So eventually BL offered an open top version of the TR7. And now here we were down at Brooklands Motor Museum. The little red car's an MG, but in the foreground this AKV 631 is a 1934 Lanchester 12.6 Sport. By this point in time, Lanchester was owned by Daimler, and there's quite a lot of similarities beneath the skin. Not just any Ford Puma now, this is the Ford Puma Racing. Wide body panels fitted over the original panels, I believe. So what you have to watch with these is the original panels can rust away merrily out of sight. And by the time you know about it, you could have a big problem. But yeah, quite an interesting little car. And down at Bicester we saw this, a race-prepared, TWR-prepared Jaguar XJS racing car. And these V12 cars on open exhaust sound phenomenal. And I think there is a video from a long time ago elsewhere here on the channel that shows just what these do sound like, and I'd recommend watching that one. Okay, we're back to the Roots Group Day. In the background there's a yellow Clan Crusader, and in the foreground a very rare Singer Gazelle, an open top version of the Singer Gazelle. So that's a bit of a bobby dazzler, little 4-seat tourer, perfect for a run out on a sunny Sunday afternoon, assuming we ever get any. And right, somewhat later, moving up to date a little bit now, late 1990s, we have this Ford Cougar. Again, that's one of those cars which they didn't sell great, but you would see them around. But now, they're almost extinct, I would have thought. This one looks in great condition. And also in very nice condition is this Reliant Signature GTE, very appropriate registration number, and you can see a Zybart rust-proofing sticker just on the left-hand side of the back window. So given that these are fiberglass bodied, I can only assume that was done to the chassis underneath, the steel chassis underneath. Right, we are back to Thoresby Hall now, and we have an early 50s Ford Prefect E493A. These were powered by the 1172cc side valve engine shared with that of the Ford Pop 103E. Great to see the original registration number on it as well. So often they get sold off. And moving somewhat more recently, we have this, the MG version of the Rover 45 Saloon. So this is the MG ZS in our favourite colour. Very eye-catching car, and this one looks to be in great condition. So definitely a modern classic now, this. And wow, look at this. This was in a public car parking area at Bicester Heritage. And we have a two-door Rolls here, the Rolls-Royce Corniche. Beautiful car. So similar to the Shadow at the front, but as you go back, longer, two doors. And yeah, quite a bit sleeker I think than the four-door. Now there's no shortage of Austin 7s around. They are super popular in vintage car events. This one is quite a rarity because it's a fabric-bodied saloon, as you can see there, with sliding door windows. There's so many different variations based on the Austin 7 chassis. But yeah, a little 4-cylinder side valve engine under that dinky bonnet. And well, this was at the All Ford Rally in 2024, and there's a huge gathering of Ford V8 pilots, which, as regulars will know, we've got a Ludlow green one of these sat here, and it's great to see all these ones on display. Absolutely magnificent lineup, wonderful big old flathead V8 engine under the bonnet. And well, look at this Aston Martin. This is an Aston DB4 Series 3, registration 862 BDN. Very, very handsome car it is too. That's just one of my favourite Astons of all. And we are back down at Malvern here, and not one but two drop-head coupe versions of the Austin A90 Atlantic. What incredible looking cars these were. They were designed very much with the export US market in mind, but I don't think they really took to them in any great numbers. Now this is a Sunbeam Rapier. You see quite a few of the so-called Audax era of Sunbeam Rapiers, but not so many of these later fastbacks of the early 1970s. And this one looked to be in really good condition. Very, very distinctive styling. There's no confusing this for anything else at all. Now we're at the Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust collection down at Gaydon. And this beauty is an XJ12L, a Series 1 V12. This is the Van der Plas version of the S1. And this dates to 73 and used to be the Queen Mother's car. What a wonderful car that is. 5.3 litre V12 with 4 Stromberg carbs. Now we are back to Gilbern's. We saw the Invader before, and this is one of the earlier Gilbern GTs. This, I think, was at Tatton Park, but I could be wrong, but I think this was at the Tatton Park Classic Car Show in 2023 or 2024. Now look at this, a lovely Ford Zephyr Mark II in the foreground there, NJT647, and a Ford Cortina Mark I alongside it. The Zephyr was particularly interesting because later on the bonnet was up and it had a triple carb arrangement on it, so quite a bit more sporting in the style of the old Raymond Mays conversions. And look at this, perhaps the ultimate evolution of the old Land Crab. This is the Austin 3 litre. These weren't particularly popular, they didn't sell in great numbers. 125 brake horsepower, 600 engine, and unlike the normal Land Crabs, these were rear-wheel drive, built 67 through to 1971. And we're back at the Goshawk pub here, and this incredible Austin turned up. This is an Austin 12, probably late 1920s I would imagine, but what a beauty, complete with a Pratt's 2-gallon petrol can on the running board. But yeah, what an original looking car that is. That was just my favourite by far at that event. And we're back in the public car park at Gaydon, and we have a Daimler, the SP250, or Darts as they were sometimes called. It's a fiberglass body, pretty distinctive styling I think it has to be said, and a 2.5 litre Edward Turner V8 engine under that front end. And again, we were looking at the Ford Cougar before, and this is the Vauxhall Calibra Coupe, similar age. And where have they all gone? I think these are quite a handsome looking car, and the more the years roll on, cars like this I think just look better and better compared to what's being produced nowadays with all the fussy frills and bits of plastic stuck everywhere. And talking of good looking cars, well, I do miss TVR being around. Hopefully maybe one day they'll be resurrected, who knows, but this is an 2002 TVR Tuscan, but just incredible looking cars, and I think the world is a lot poorer for not having TVR around. But great to see so many preserved ones at these shows. Okay, back to vintage cars here. Got YU5820 as the registration number of this 1927 Lee Francis K-Type Tourer. Lee Francis was a company that previously built bicycles and then later moved into vehicle manufacture, as so many did. And here we have a Humber Setba circa 1964. Very, very similar to the Singer Vogue. Again with a curvy roof and wraparound rear window on this particular example, and that would be squared off on later cars. Yeah, very eye-catching, very American-esque styling on Roots Group cars of this era. And we are back to MG of the 1950s, and this is a little 2-seat MG TF. Now we are down at the Haynes Motor Museum, and this is a place I need to revisit. I haven't done a video there yet. If you'd like me to do one someday, please pop a note into the comments. This 9799F, the registration is a 1957 Jaguar Mark 8, These are the 3.4 litre version of the XK straight six engine. Now, as you might know, I'm a big fan of classic estates, and look at this wonderful Humber LAS 855, a lovely two-tone Humber there. Guessing it's a Super Snipe, maybe a Hawk, but whatever. What a great thing, such a practical classic that is. And yeah, classic estates really are fantastic. Okay, we're back over in North Wales, Ruthin, for the Hero Challenge Rally, a Triumph TR6, somewhat modified Triumph TR6. I seem to remember this one had a problem with the fan belt snapping, and there was a mad rush on to go and find a replacement fan belt before having to head off to the next stage in the rally. Now, this was a few years ago at the Crewe Heritage Centre. This is quite a rare one of the early big fin versions of the Farina Morris Oxford 745 PTE. Now, I haven't seen this one for a little while, so whether it's still in the area or not, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, what a great thing. I had the Austin version of one of these a few years ago. And next up we have the lovely Jensen 541. So these are the BMC 6-cylinder engine, fiberglass bodywork. These predated the CV8. We saw a maroon CV8 before. But yeah, lovely, lovely looking car these are. The lineup of classic Fords here, late 30s. And in the foreground we have got a drop-head coupe version or Tourer version of the Ford Model CX, and alongside it is a Ford CX Saloon. And these were very, very similar to the Model C that came before, just a slightly different grille as far as I can tell. And here, outside the Three Greyhounds pub in Cheshire, we have a pair of fairly recent Morgans, built down in Malvern, of course. Back to classic Jaguars and a lovely XK120 fixed head coupe, complete with leather bonnet strap as well, just to give it that racy look. And here, what a fantastic looking vehicle that is, finished in grey down at Bicester. Beautiful, beautiful looking car. And here we have a Daimler outside the Horseshoe pub, which sadly is no more. Houses now occupy that particular site, so this was quite some time ago. It looks like a Daimler Conquest, I think. Yeah, it could be the Century, but either way, quite a nice two-tone Daimler with the pre-selected gearbox, of course, these had. And down at Bicester is this glorious Rover P6, a V8, so that'll have a 3.5 litre V8 engine under the bonnet. If it's a 3500S, it'll also have the manual gearbox, which is particularly desirable, but I think most of them are probably autos and some later wheels on that particular one. And here we have the Sunbeam Talbot Lotus. Yeah, great car, rear wheel drive, quite popular in historic rallying now. This was a contemporary rival to like the Ford, the Escort Mark IIs, that kind of thing. And we are back to Hillman Minx now. Now this has got the later roofline. Like I said, some of the earlier Audax era Minxes and Gazelles have the wraparound back window, and then they sort of squared off the roofline a bit and put a more vertical, flatter rear window in them, just to give a bit more room inside the cabin and just to sort of modernise the styling as well. And here we have a fantastic Rover SD1, the 3.5 litre Van den Plas no less. So this was top of the tree. The Vitesse was a sporty one with a 3.5 V8. The Van den Plas was a sporty one, but with a bit of added luxury, I believe. But yeah, quite a handsome looking car, and this is my favourite colour for those. And very similar in colour is this Essex liveried Lotus Esprit, and an earlier Bond spec Esprit in white just over to the right there as well. Back to the Roots Group Day, and this is a Hillman Avenger Estate. We saw the Avenger Tiger before, but much more common with the regular saloons and estates, and this one looks to be in really nice shiny condition, very well preserved, and I do like the full width wheel trims on this one as well. So yeah, it's great to see these rarities. Next up we are seeing BF 5516, a 1928 Morgan three-wheeler. This in the paddock area again at VSCC Lowton Park, which if you like to see and hear old cars being exercised properly, I highly recommend getting down to one of these events. Okie dokie, back to road cars, and this is a Ford Zodiac, the Mark III version of the Ford Zodiac. later wheels on this particular one. I'm not quite sure where those wheels have come from. Now, whether there's any mods under the bonnet or not, I do not know, but either way, quite a rare survivor now. And here we have another little MG two-seater. This is the TD. So whereas the TC that came before looked a bit like the pre-war cars with their wire wheels and so on, this is the TD with the pressed steel wheels, just to try and give it a bit more modernity. And this would later be replaced by the TF. Right, back to the 1970s now. And we have quite an upmarket high-spec version of the Ford Cortina Mark III. This one on an L plate, so about 1972 is the date of this very eye-catching car. And look at that estate version of a Mark III alongside as well. Wow, what a pair. And we saw a side-on view of an E-Type fixed head coupe earlier. And here we've got a rear three-quarter view of an E-Type Roadster. This a Series 2 on a G plate, so about 1968. This would have had the 4.2 straight six engine under that long swooping bonnet. And somewhat shorter in bonnet is KTL 590, very, very nicely preserved Ford Pop 103E, and this had the same 1172cc engine as the sit up and beg Ford Prefect that we saw just a few minutes ago. Some Capris in the background there as well. And, well, you couldn't have a collection of classic British cars without a few Minis in it. And here we've got, there's four fairly late examples of the classic Mini. There's a somewhat earlier Mark 1 or Mark 2 just visible down the back there in grey with the white roof. Now, you don't see these too often. I know the owner of this, he's actually got a couple of these. This is the Vauxhall Sports Hatch. So this is the estate car version of the Droop Snoot Vauxhall, the 2.3 slant 4 engine under the bonnet of that one. And these go pretty well by all accounts. The main body shell is shared with that of the HC Viva estate. Now we have DLO 934, a 1937 Bentley Woody. So that must be pretty much unique, I would have thought. This one's currently showing as being sawn, i.e. registered as off the road, so hopefully there's no great problem there and it'll be back out and about again later this year. This was taken as an evening meet. There's our little Renault 4CV in the background, but as we're sticking with British cars in this compilation, we've got an Austin 7 Ruby, and there's a little TC. This one's been restored but given a bit of an older look with those cycle mudguards, and next up a Riley RM Saloon. We are back at the Bentley Heritage Collection over at Crewe at Pims Lane, and this is just a wonderful S3 Continental 176 FGH. There's a registration of that one, and alongside it is that restored T1 that I mentioned a little while ago now. And here's a sporty little number, and again there is that Riley RM in the background, so that gets all over the place, but the car in the foreground is a very rare Brabham tuned version of the Vauxhall Viva HB. I'm not quite sure what wheels it would have had originally, probably not those, but I do love the stripes on these. These look pretty cool, I think. And we are back down at the BMC and BL day, and wow, that's, I mean, Austin A70 Herefords are rare enough, even in saloon form. But to see a drop-a coupe version, well, I mean, this car must be almost unique, I would have thought. There can be only a handful of these left, certainly in this country, I'm sure. And representing Range Rover, I wanted to have an early Range Rover in this collection somewhere, and I went with this one instead. This one is a fire truck version, so not the regular road car, but this one is a pretty incredible looking vehicle, presumably an airfield fire vehicle from somewhere or other. And representing MGB Roadsters, we have this lowered, tuned-up version, complete with the factory hardtop, which is fiberglass, and a smart set of mini-like alloy wheels on this one as well. But yeah, fantastic. Very popular in historic racing nowadays. So many tuning parts available for those. And we're back at Gaydon. Another Aston Martin, this one a bit later than the other ones that we've featured. This is a DB7 Vantage. Yeah, handsome looking car this, I think. Some of the underpinnings were shared with the XJS Jaguar, I believe. Now this is a beauty. You don't see these around all that often. OYC 417. This is an Austin A40 Sport. So this shared the running gear with the Austin A40 Devon, later the Somerset with the 1200 engine. These had twin carburetors just to give them a bit of extra pep. And the body was by Jensen Motors, I believe. Okay, we've got some more classic standard action here. We've got a Vanguard 6, the Vignale version, the revised version of the Vanguard Phase 3. This is a 6-cylinder car, and I think the car alongside is one of the regular 4-cylinders, but in beautiful condition, all of them. And there's one of the earlier cars just alongside that as well. Okay, Jaguar XK140 fixed head coupe time here. And unlike the 120 that came before, these had much heavier bumpers on them, which some people do actually remove, just to give them a slightly cleaner look at the front. Slightly thicker grille bars on the 140s as well compared to the early cars. And there's a 120 alongside. And in the car park, the public car park down at the British Motor Museum, I spotted this. A very tidy Anglia 105E, so I thought I'd include this one in here too. Looks like it's got some modern seats in this one, just for a bit of added comfort, but otherwise looks to be pretty original apart from that reversing light. And we're back at Goresworth Hall, and here from 1966 is a lovely Alvis TE21. The TE21 introduced the stacked headlamps that you can see there. The previous TD21 just had single Lucas lamps, one either side. And wow, sunny days, who remembers those? And this is a beauty, NOM 692, a 1953 Bentley R-Type. Two-tone colour scheme, very, very nice quality car of the early 1950s. And if you've made it this far on this compilation of classic British cars, well, thank you so much. And we are again looking at land crabs here. In the foreground is the Wolseley 1885 version, still full front-wheel drive, 4-cylinder, and alongside it, looking very similar, is the Wolseley 6. That's got 4 grills either side of the radiator, whereas the 4-cylinder car just has 3. And another wonderful Aston here, this one from the early 1970s. This is an Aston Martin V8 on an M plate, so about 1973 is the year of that one. Good looking car. This was an evolution of the earlier DBS, which was initially available with just a 6, and then the V8 was introduced later. Now we are at Crewe Heritage Centre, as the sign in the background gives away, and this lovely little Land Rover often turns up there. I think it's a Series 2 STL Fire Brigade in Harlow, but yeah, what a beauty that is. Looks to be so original, the original paint just polished through here and there, and complete with matching trailer. And this is the sporty MG Magnette of the 1950s. B-Series engine, 1489cc, and twin SU carburetors under that bonnet. Next up in this British car compilation, we have another Ford Escort, but this is a comparatively rare Ford Escort Mark I Estate. And apart from those slightly deeper steel wheels, which do actually suit it a treat, this looks to be super original, even down to the proper old chrome door mirror that you can see there. Great to see that one being so well looked after. And wow, look at this, a Jaguar D-Type. There were 2 main versions of these, the short nose and the long nose. This is the long nose, which also has the fin on the back just to aid stability at high speeds. And these things will crack 180 miles an hour almost down the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans in the early to mid 1950s. And here we have another example of the Wedge Leyland Princess of the 1970s. About 1976 will be the date of this one. Yeah, incredible looking car, so much more modern compared to the Farina that's parked alongside it, and yet age-wise there's probably not a great difference. Okay, Ford time and the whole gaggle of Ford Capris here. In the foreground we have the Ford Capri 2, which was a revised version of the Mark I, of course, but the big difference was this car introduced the opening rear hatch, whereas the Mark I just had to do with a little opening boot lid beneath the fixed rear window. Okay, 2 baby Austins, so-called baby Austins now. They've got an A30 in the foreground, a 2-door car in black, and behind it a 2-door Austin A35. Very, very similar really. The gutters were slightly different around the top of the screen. The A35 has a bigger back window and has the 948 engine compared to 803 in the older car. Okay, and staying now with BMC, we have the Austin Cambridge, but not just any Austin Cambridge. This is a circa 1968 Austin Cambridge Estate, the Countryman version. Wow, what a great looking car. It's got an aftermarket sun visor on it. But yeah, what a great thing. And you don't see too many of these. Who remembers the Rover 600? There was a really impressive turnout of these at Gaydon at the BMC BL/Austin Rover gathering in 2024. The weather helped too, but it's great to see these because apart from a red one that I see around here occasionally, they've all but disappeared. And here, resting in between rally stages, is our YH6L, a little Ginetta G15 from about 1972. Now here's one you may not have seen before. This is a very rare, circa 1952 Leaf Francis 14 horsepower Sports. Yeah, very unusual car. This would have been a contemporary, I suppose, of the Jaguar XKs. 2.5 litre engine under that bonnet. And here we have the front wheel drive Lotus Elan. This was the M100 series of Lotus Elan in our favourite colour. Front wheel drive, yep, Isuzu engine under that bonnet. By all accounts, these are a great steer too, just like the original Elans of the 1960s. Classic Jaguar time, but not quite, because this is the Daimler version. The V12 engine there on display, pipes everywhere. That's a feature of this particular car. This is the Daimler 66, so the Daimler V12, slightly more at market, more plushly equipped compared to the Jaguar. But yeah, fantastic machine. Now we have 624 UXY, a 1960 Sunbeam Alpine Mark 1. Quite rare, these early cars had the big fins, and I do love the styling of that factory hardtop. Very, very eye-catching. Great looking car. Of course, one of these featured in the first Bond film, Dr. No, with Sean Connery all those years ago. And that is Gawsworth Hall in the background. And the car is a just post-war Invicta Black Prince. And what an incredible car that is, and I had a good look at that it's in the Gawsworth videos, but also at Trentham Gardens. I think I had a good look at that as well. And well, we've had a Herald 1200, and this is the Triumph Herald 1360, so the slightly later revised car with a 1296cc engine. That's very distinctive, sort of slightly angry looking styling at the front compared to the earlier cars. This one on F plate, so about 1967 or early 68. Now a rear view on a very wet day of a lovely XK140 fixed head that we often see at the events we get to, and hopefully we'll see it again in 2025. There's a Morgan just in the background there on the right hand side, surrounded by many Porsches. And continuing this look at classic British cars, we have this Hillman Minx. And I was saying before, when we were looking at the Hillman Minx California and the two-door, this is really what the California was based upon. The original four-door Minx. Early cars were side valve, later ones had overhead valve engines, all four-cylinder, and column gear change. Okay, back to Lowton Park, and another MGB, this a chrome bumper, fairly late chrome bumper MGB GT. The GT being a Pininfarina design based on the original Roadster. These came out just a few years after the Roadster first went on sale in 62. These were launched in late 65. And we're back at Inglenut Classics, a couple of classic Morris Thousands there, and another one in the background. I can just see my Jag in the background as well. And over on the right, the blue van, that's a BMC BMC JU250, which is a really rare survivor in its own right now. Okay, we've seen Heralds, but this is the 6-cylinder Triumph Vitesse. This is a lovely car. It's showing off its 2-litre engine. The earlier Vitesses had the 1.6-litre version of the Triumph Straight Six, but this has the 2-litre unit, and you can see there just how easy it is to work on everything. The accessibility is just unrivaled, really. Okay, we've had a bit of Ford Cortina action in this video already, and here is quite a late one, the Ford Cortina Mark V. This was in the Crew Heritage Centre. It's on a Y plate, so the beginning of the 1980s is the date for this one. Built not long before the Ford Sierra came along. Okay, quite a few British cars here, minis. Got an Austin 1100, and in the foreground, the F-Type version of the Vauxhall Victor of the late 1950s. Yeah, what an incredible looking car. Very American inspired styling with that wraparound screen and two-tone colours, lots of chrome. And looking a little less loved at the moment at any rate was this, another Alvis, a TD21 fixed head coupe. Hopefully the future will be bright for this particular example, but at the time of photographing it, it wasn't looking its best. But I think these are very, very handsome, probably slightly underrated cars. I'd definitely like one of those one day. Okie dokie, and well, look at this, a Morris Oxford Traveller, the estate car version of the Morris Oxford before the Farinas came along. Two-tone paint scheme, and the Wolseley 1500 in black alongside it. But yeah, those little estates, they're just fantastic, so rare now. And here, BDW 38, oof, that's nice, a 1937 SS 100, 2.5 litres, and behind it is a Lotus Cortina. Two very different cars, both British of course. And there is the Lotus Cortina. This is a fairly early pre-Aeroflow version. You can see the small side lights beneath the headlights. That was the arrangement there was slightly different on the later Lotus Cortinas and Cortinas in general. So this is a fairly early one, used on the Hero Challenge Rally just a few years ago. And look at this mighty machine. This was at a gathering held at the Royal Oak pub. Again, there is a video of that elsewhere on the channel. I think I broke down on that particular day, but we won't dwell on that. This is a Vauxhall Cresta PB, big 6-cylinder engine, and it looks like it's got side exiting exhaust on this one as well. Well, now we are back to Wolseley, the pre-war Wolseley here, BGC 734. This is a Wolseley Hornet Special, probably mid-1930s in date, I would have thought. But yeah, 6-cylinder engine under that well-louvered bonnet, and these always sound lovely. Really, really nice cars. Sporting car. And here, a very unsporting car, but a very, very rare car. This was at Goresworth Hall. The Vauxhall Victor, the FC, or the 101, as it was sometimes referred to. You hardly ever see these. This is an E-Reg, so that puts it at somewhere between January and July of 1967. And we have a classic Mini, and by this point in time, so late 80s, early 90s, there were loads and loads of special editions. I think this is the Mini Sidewalk. There's a very similar car in the background too. Again, this was at the... which pub was this at? I forget now. The Royal Oak, I think it was. And we are back at Lowton Park, and what a magnificent car. This is dating to 1920. The Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost Torpedo. Just look at the shape of the body on that, and those wonderful toolboxes on the running boards. I mean, that was a way to travel, certainly. Okay, we're back down at the British Motor Museum, and we had a Vauxhall Cavalier convertible before, the Mark II Cavalier, and this is the regular saloon, circa 1984, the four-door saloon. So this is the one that most people probably remember, and there's a PA Vauxhall from the late 50s parked alongside it. Now, if you've never seen one of these before, well, I wouldn't be surprised at all. This is from 1953, an Allard P2 Safari on display at the British Motor Museum down at Gaydon. I recommend visiting there if you're ever on the M40 passing junction 12, I think it is. Registration NLD 412. And this was at a little gathering called the Marbury Merry Days. Again, there is a video of this. Our V8 Pilot is there in green alongside, and the car is a Bondi Keep or a Queep from 1966, Triumph powered, either Triumph Herald or Triumph Vitesse power and chassis underneath that fiberglass body. And we are back to Vauxhall Cavaliers again. This is a Mark I two-door, that must be quite rare, two-door version of the Mark I Cavalier Saloon, but there can't be too many of these around, especially in that condition. That is just immaculate. Pretty base spec, not even a passenger door mirror. And we had the Seeker before, the fixed head coupe, and this is a car it was based upon, I suppose. VP03 is an AC Ace, this one from 1956. This particular car is so original, it's beautiful, this one, and it does have a bit of race history as well, this, so that was a real gem. And we have a Riley from 1933, a little Riley Saloon, EG774, the registration number. It's a 9 horsepower car, so just over 1 litre engine size, and I think this is a Falcon. Please correct me. I did wonder at first if it was a Monaco, but I think this is a Riley Falcon of 1933. Somewhat newer, here we have a Rover 820 SI. So 3-box styling on these big saloons. Later hatchbacks would also be offered too. But again, it's one of those sort of cars where they just seem to have all but disappeared. They hardly ever see these out and about, certainly not in regular use. A bit of a sporty number here. We've seen some TVR action already, and here's the TVR 350i, this one on a G plate, which puts it about 1989, I think. Yeah, Very nice, very eye-catching car, and these sound fantastic with those big Wolseley Rover V8 engines and other fiberglass bonnet. And well, talking of rare British open-top cars, we have this, the Jensen SV8, and I don't have the numbers to hand, but I think probably fewer than 100 of these were built in all, I'm pretty sure of that. Occasionally you see them at some of the classic car meets that we go to, but very distinctive styling. And here we have another wonderful Riley RM. This is one of the 2.5 litre cars. PKE 803 is the registration number. You can just see the pale blue badge at the top of the radiator. That tells you it's the 2.5 as opposed to the dark blue badge, which would say it's a 1.5. And another wonderful MG, this an MGA fixed head coupe. Look a bit tight to get in and out of these, but I do like the styling of them. This, of course, was the predecessor to the MGB, which came along in 1962. And we are back at Bentley Heritage here, and another 3 wonderful old Bentleys there. VGX 853, dates to 1958, that's a Series 1 Continental Flying Spur. Just what incredible looking cars, absolutely stunning. Occasionally we do see these out and about driving around, but yeah, wonderful. And how about this, a Hillman Imp? How many of you have owned Hillman Imps or Singer Chamois, that kind of thing, which is based on the Imp, of course. These two turn up fairly often at the meetings we get to, and it's great to see them built up at Linwood in Scotland, rear engined. Yeah, this one's got some mini lights on this as well. And talking of mini light type wheels, this Spitfire 1500 is also adorned with a set of wheels, and also what looks to be a Triumph tuned twin pipe exhaust sticking out of the back, which makes them sound really, really nice. So just under 1500cc, the 4-cylinder engine in these. That was shared with the MG Midget, the rubber bumper. And at speed, here at a VSCC event, we have this great little Austin 7 Ulster. Could be a replica, could be one of the original cars, who knows, because they are being recreated using original Austin 7 running gear. But either way, what a great little car. And it's probably my favourite photo that I've taken ever of an Austin 7. And talking of the Spitfire 1500 engine, here is the rubber bumper MG Midget that also benefited from the 1500 Spitfire engine, an engine which can trace its roots way back to the Standard 8 of the early 1950s when it first came out in 803cc guys. Now, I think I've only seen this car once, a little Rochdale Olympic. This was at one of the Crew Heritage meetings, the Off the Rails meetings. This one registered in 1964, fiberglass body, quite a fun little car, and I bet they go really, really well. I'm not quite sure what the little hump is on the side of the front wing, just behind the front wheel there, but yeah, rare car. And talking of rare cars, wow, NFO 143. This is a Lanchester Leader, 14 horsepower car, drop head coupe version of it. And this is the only one of these I have ever seen. I've only seen this one once, I think. This was down at Malvern just a couple of years ago. Incredible car. And we are back down at Gaydon. This was the big mini bash in 2019. This is the Unipower GT, and great car, mini powered, fiberglass body, dates to 1966. That screen surround has been lifted straight from the early Triumph Spitfire or the TR45. So a great car. Now, how about this? Lovely, lovely car, PPJ834. This is the AC 2 litre of the, I'm guessing, very early 1950s. Quite a lofty roof line on this particular car. Very deep screens on these, so it must be great to see out. The visibility must be pretty good. And we caught a glimpse of this one much earlier in this particular video. But here we have a two-tone limited edition version of the Vauxhall Astra Mark I and various minis alongside it. Anyway, I hope you're finding this compilation of classic British cars to be of interest. Thank you for sticking with it. And here we have the Riley Elf. So this and the Wolseley Hornet were the upmarket booted versions, I suppose, of the contemporary minis. This is an earlyish one with the exterior door handles. Later ones did away with that same for the minis that were produced alongside, but these were much more plush inside. And here, a Triumph Dolomite. I'm assuming this is a Dolly Sprint, a 16-valve Dolomite Sprint, judging by those alloy wheels, but I suppose it could have been fitted to any other Dolomite as well. And there's another midget alongside that, and you can just see a nice curvy Saab 96. And we caught a glimpse of a beige one of these earlier on in this collection. Here we've got a circa 1981 Triumph Acclaim. So this dates back to when British Leyland, or Austin Rover as it may have been then, did a collaboration with Honda and came up with this, the Triumph badged Acclaim. And another Hillman Avenger. This looks like quite an upmarket version with metallic green paint and a vinyl roof. Not a Tiger, but this is one of the plusher versions, circa 1972. What model would this be? Please let me know in the comments. Is it a DL? Something like that, I'm not quite sure, but a rare sight now. And you don't exactly stumble across these very often either. This is the Humber Scepter, based on the Arrow series minks, the boxy square Arrow series Hillman minxes and hunters of the late 1960s. But this is top of the tree, the Humber Scepter, the posh one, with all the extra ornamentation and very distinctive wheel trims too. And two for the price of one. We've got a Jaguar XJ6 Series 1 on the K plate in the foreground. And next to it, same registration year on the K, is the Daimler version, the Daimler Sovereign. So big chunky grille on the Daimler compared to the Jaguar, slightly different inside, but under the skin pretty much identical. And we saw a few Phase 3 standard Vanguards earlier in this collection. This is a real rare one. This is the base spec, the entry level, I suppose you call it, the standard Ensign. This one's got a 64 registration, but yeah, a very, very rare survivor, that one. That's great to see. Okay, and at Goresworth Hall, a little lake in the background there, and we have quite a tantalising lineup of Jensen Interceptors. Very, very nice. Of course, by this time, Jensen had switched from fiberglass coachwork to steel, and that can cause problems with people who are trying to restore rusty versions of Interceptors now. Okay, SNX 36. Now this is a bit of an odd one. This is a prototype down at Gaydon, and this is the Road Rover. So even way back, Rover were thinking maybe we should be doing a slightly more road ready version of the Land Rover, I suppose, and of course eventually they produced the Range Rover. Next up, SC6400. This is a very sporty looking M-type midget, little MG midget of the mid to late 1930s. I love the little split V windscreen on these as well. These were based on the old Morris Minor, the old pre-war Morris Minor chassis. Somewhat later is this very eye-catching, quite rare two-door version of Ford's mighty Granada of the late 1970s. And quite a few British cars in evidence there. If you look in the background, you can see an Allegro, Rover P6, there's a little Spitfire alongside on the Marina Coupe. And here we have a Marcos, and we can see the little bonnet catch on the side there, which is shared with the Triumph Herald and various other Triumphs. It's got the cast M on it as well, which was for Michelotti, the Herald designer, but coincidentally is also suitable on the Marcos, of course. And another classic Granada. This is the Coleman Mill limousine version based on the Mark I Coupe. So it's stretched and a much taller roof on it, but you can see the coupe lines at the back there compared to the regular saloon. Yeah, what an incredible vehicle that is. There can't be too many good ones of those left. Most of them I think have been scrapped or bang erased. Right, JJJ861D, so that's a 66 registration. So that points to this being a replica of the 1950s Jaguar XKSS. Probably based on an E-Type. I would have thought the original XKSS was a road version of the original D-Type race car. And here, a couple of later Cavaliers. These are the Mark III, I think. I hope I've got that right. Version of the Cavalier. Two different ones there. Very rare sight now. Oh, here's an old favourite. Long-termers on the channel and the Old Classic Car website may well remember this. This was our old Ford Anglia E494A from 1952. Such an original little car. If I'd had room for that, I would have definitely kept that. And continuing this look back at old British cars, we are going way back to the 1920s now with VM 1417, a 2-litre Crossley saloon, the Manchester-built Crossley, from 1927, this particular car. What a magnificent motor car that is, a real quality car from the vintage era. Somewhat later on an L plate is this, the Daimler Sovereign version of the Jaguar XJ40. And this one looks to be in incredible condition. Of course, as with so many cars this era, rust can really kill these off. These you have to watch, the sills, back arches, even the bulkhead, you have to check for rust. And here we have, well, that's our old Dodge on the left there, the old Tourer that we ran for over 10 years. But the maroon car, 28 FLK, is an AC Greyhound with a Morris Minor 1000 alongside it. Thank you so much for sticking with this particular upload. I hope you're enjoying it. Again, please let me know in the comments what you think of the cars. Here, next is a Lotus Elan Sprint. In the background, several other British cars and a couple of French ones as well, and the German Beetle there as well. So a bit of everything in this particular shop. But yeah, that Elan Sprint, a fixed head version, what a beauty that is. Somewhat larger, from 1967, is this Mark IV Zephyr, the Ford Zephyr, whereas the car before had the fins. Still had quite a few curves, fins and that kind of thing, the Mark III Zephyrs and Zodiacs. But this, well, things have got a lot more angular by the late 1960s. These cars were huge. Now we're going back a decade or so to the 1950s, or beginning of the 1960s, and here we have an estate car version of the F-Type Vauxhall Victor. And I do like these. The curvy wraparound rear side windows is a real nod to American styling trends at the time, but these are great and so rare now. And somewhat more popular in classic car, collector car circles. Certainly the events that we get to are these, the little MGFs with the K-Series mid-mounted engine behind the driver and the passenger. So access to work on the engine isn't always that easy, the little K-Series unit, but yeah, by all accounts they drive really nicely. Okay, back to the 1950s, and we have a police era Wolseley 680. And if you look at the main body tub from the screen backwards, that is shared with the Morris Oxford MO. Then of course you've got the longer front end to accommodate a 6-cylinder engine and that proud vertical Wolseley grille. And well, what an eye-catching car these are. I'm not entirely sure about the styling on these, if I'm particularly honest, but this is an ex-Monte Carlo or Rally of the Alps Allard, a V8 Allard with a side valve Ford V8 engine under that long bonnet, but quite an unusual car, quite odd proportions, and somewhat smaller, fiberglass bodied. And seen here down at Malvern is this, a Fairthorpe Electron Minor. Fab little car, little home-built car, and not too many of these around. But yeah, great to see this bright red one just a few years ago. Now we had an A40 Mark II right at the beginning of this particular collection of images, and here this is the Austin A40 Farina Mark I. These were introduced in 1958, ours is a 1960, and that's about the age of this one here, which apart from those Midnight wheels looks to be in very original condition. And who remembers these? The Triumph 1300, the front wheel drive Triumph 1300 by all accounts. These are quite a nice little quality car of the late 60s, beginning of the 1970s. This one in brown, which is a pretty common colour back in the day. You don't see too many brown cars nowadays, but yeah, nice little car. And this is the Morris 10 Series M. These were built either side of World War II. The pre-war cars, late 30s cars, had a slightly sort of more angular radiator grille on them. So I'm guessing this one is just post-war, about 46 or 7, that kind of era. But yeah, very much a pre-war design. And next we have the hatchback Ford Escort. So this will be a Ford Escort Mark III 5-door hatch. And it's got one of those aftermarket grills which you have the little fog lights built into them, so that's a nice little period accessory from the early 1980s. Wheels too I think have been changed, but otherwise looks to be very original. And we're back at Moreton Hampstead, the magnificent motor museum that sadly is no more, but there is a museum looking all around there elsewhere on the channel, so please check that one out. This is an Austin A105 Westminster Van den Plas, and that is a seriously rare car. I mean, Westminsters are rare enough, the 6-cylinder cars, but the VDP version, wow, that is rare. And also pretty unusual now is this, an Omega, Vauxhall Omega. And this, I think, is a limousine conversion by Eagle. Now, this could be, I think it's a Statesman, or it could be the Quest. I'm not quite sure which one this is. I know Johnny Smith has got a stretched Omega. It could be the same as that. Okay, we are back down at Bewley, the National Motor Museum down south. This is a Dello, a little trials car, a little off-road trials car based on Ford Pop running gear. And you can see the Ford Pop wheels there. And there'll be a little side valve Ford engine under that bonnet. We're almost done now. Oh, looking a little sad is this Rover 25. I think this was a diesel version of a Rover 25. We were staying at a place down in Devon and we went for a bit of a walk up the lane and we spotted this looking a little sorry for itself, and the window being open didn't do the interior any favours whatsoever. And a few years ago we were staying down in Somerset and we visited the Haynes Motor Museum. Again, that is somewhere that I need to visit again sometime soon. This is the mighty Lagonda. These were introduced in the, I think it was the late 70s, early 80s, that kind of era. Quite an advanced car, but keeping one of these running now is, well, that's quite the job, I think. And now we have another classic Escort, little three-door Escort this time. This is the XR3 on an X plate. And, well, this was the forerunner, the predecessor to the XR3i, which was much more common, but the XR3 just had a single carburettor. I think it's probably a Weber carb. And another wonderful Ford here, a Ford E93A Prefect, but this is a rare drop head coupe version. This is incredibly rare. This was at the Tatton Park Classic Car Show, I think in 2024. And I think that one lives fairly local to us as well, but I haven't seen it anywhere else. But anyway, that wonderful little Prefect rounds out this look at 300 classic British cars. So thank you so much for watching this particular video. There are stacks and stacks of videos on the channel, so please have a look around. If you haven't subscribed yet, please think about doing so, because that way you'll be notified about future uploads, and there are loads more planned for the rest of this year. So thanks once again for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of thing. I'm going off for a cup of tea now, and bye for now.